Hello everyone, my name is Mpoomy Ledwaba and I'm a proud ambassador of Medshield Mom. Now today I've come with a topic that is so close to my heart, simply because of experience growing up and just raising my own little ones. And we're talking about the dynamics of relationship between siblings and also nurturing a positive and a beautiful relationship. Now the truth is that this can be complicated, so if you feel like you are failing, let me let you know now, you are not. You're doing the best you can. But relationships, even with friendships, siblings, parents, are dynamic and they're complicated. But we shouldn't just leave it there. We should find ways to navigate them and ensure that we are planting the right seeds. Let me start with the beauty and the challenges of sibling relationships. Now, I have two little ones who are 18 months apart, a girl and a boy. So already you can tell what we are dealing with. And it is a mix of love. It is a mix of laughter, fun, play, being best friends, but also a whole lot of fights. And that is absolutely normal. It is just part of growing up. I remember growing up, my sister and I are 4 years apart, and we used to fight like cat and dog. But now we are pretty much best friends. That is because our parents ensured that they nurture a loving relationship amongst us. So even when we fight, our parents didn't take sides, but it was always a coming together that, hey, your sister has her own opinions and so do you, but let's come together, let's hug it out. We've already fought it out, but let's hug it out. What's important is to allow and build a home of love so that our children know that even when there's disagreements, we always come back to love. Also, it's important to know that studies show that sibling relationships are vital in our children's development. It helps them with socializing skills and so much more. So having a sibling is the best thing you could do for your little one. And the next thing is encouraging positive communication. The words that we speak, the emotions that we show to our children really matter. I mean, our kids are still very young, but I can see that how we talk to them and the use of language is impacting their own lives. So even when it's fighting it out, there's certain words we discourage our children from using. So for example, my son came home and he was obsessed with saying, you're lying, you're lying. And he said it with so much anger. And instead of telling him not to ever disagree with someone, we just helped him and say, maybe instead of pointing at people and saying you're lying, rather say, I don't believe you're telling the truth. And he has been practicing this and it sounds so much better and less terrifying, but we are teaching him how to communicate in a positive way. It's also important with creating and fostering a space of communication that we don't dismiss feelings. So we create a space of safety, a space of empathy, and a space of love, and a space of you're allowed to express your feelings. So like I said, when my son came home saying you're lying, I can't just dismiss the feeling and say you're not allowed to say that, but instead, how can we turn that into a teachable moment of maybe let's communicate a little better. So my daughter, big sister, hates it when her brother copies her. So she would say, I don't like you, I don't like you. And we had to sit down and say, hey, I understand that what brother is doing is frustrating, but instead of saying you don't like him, how about you say, I don't like what you're doing. And so now she can identify that it's not that I don't like my brother, it's I don't like what he is doing right now. So those little conversations and teachable moments are so important. And even in the correcting, let it not be a reaction of you're not allowed to say that, but hey, come, let's talk about this. Then there's embracing uniqueness. It is very tempting to want to compare our children, especially the younger ones to the older ones, and say, look what your sister is doing, look how your sister is doing it, or have expectation, but reality is they're not going to be the same. And instead of trying to mold them into these little kids who act the same, we need to embrace their uniqueness. For us, this comes with spending individual time with the children. So every now and then I will have a date with my daughter while my husband has a date with our son, and vice versa, and we'll swap out. I'll have a date with my son and the other way. This allows us to get to know the kids outside of each other, because when they come together, they influence each other. So my son will be watching shows his sister likes because that's just what it is. But when we sit with him and allow him to have space alone, we realize, oh, actually he has different interests. a unique thing that we embrace is my daughter loves art and she loves coloring in. So in the evenings, we give her time, some creative time. But my son doesn't like that. His interests are not there. He wants to jump around and run around. And so we entertain that. But instead of trying to mold him and say, look, your sister's drawing, it's okay, let's see where he thrives and let's encourage that. So it's important to identify how your children are unique, to encourage instead of trying to mold them to be the same. Building teamwork. This is a favorite of ours, and this involves a whole lot of playing. It's important for us to teach our children that no matter what, as they grow up in life, they stick together as a team. So through playing games like soccer games and all sorts of things, sometimes daddy and I will be on the same team and they'll be on the same team, or I will be on the same team with the other child. But it's important that we play games and we do activities that foster that teamwork, so that in the real world, when they go out there, they can protect each other. With us, I see it when we get to school, how the children stand together. They can fight when they're at home, but as soon as they're with other people, they will stand together and everybody will know that this is the Ledwaba team. And for me, just witnessing my kids accomplish something together, teach each other how to ride the bike, do the garden together. They love watering the plants, and seeing their joy as they work as a team. My son opens the tap, my daughter takes the bucket, the watering can. It's a beautiful experience that I can't put a price to, and it is certainly worth all the conflict that tends to take place. And lastly, being role models. We cannot expect our children to interact well with their siblings and to do well in relationships if we don't model that. If we're constantly fighting, bickering, having attitude, that is exactly who they become. It's not what we say that they do, it's what we do that they model. So it's important that we also foster a home of love and kindness, most importantly when we interact with them. So if our children are doing something terrible, we don't go there shouting at them and then tell them they're not allowed to shout at their brothers, but we show how we communicate when we don't like things. So it's important for us as parents to have a home that is filled with love, kindness, empathy, and a safe space. Then growing up, even through the terrible twos and the tantrums and all of that, at the core of it, they know that the foundation of the home is love, warmth, and kindness. So let's continue building the relationships of our children and their siblings, embrace their uniqueness, work on that team building, and just make sure that each child feels seen, heard, and loved. And that's it from me on this insert of Medshield Mom. I hope you've enjoyed it. I would love to hear from you how you foster sibling relationships with your little one, whether you have an 18-month gap like me or a bigger gap, or you just have to have them interact with some cousins. I'm Mpoomy Ledwaba, and thank you so much for joining me.